Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Loan Officer Wealth Podcast. We are blessed today with Lacey Morrison. Lacey, welcome to the show.
Hi. Thank you for having me, Chris.
It's great to be here. I'm looking forward to our conversation. And you're in the right place today if you're looking for how to generate better results on social media in your mortgage business. Lacey has done a phenomenal job and kind of came out of, well, a completely different industry, and not only has become a real leader in how to leverage social media, but also done it herself in the mortgage industry. So Lacey, again, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's exciting and incredibly nerve-wracking, but we're doing it. We're doing it. We're going to talk about ourselves.
So it's just to get the viewers to know you and your story. Can you give us just a synopsis of like, how did you get into the mortgage industry? How did that tie together with social? What did that look like?
For sure. So I'll give you the elevator pitch on Lacey. I try to keep it short, but it's not a short story. So I graduated from the University of Calgary. I did communications and gender studies degrees. So I learned right out of the gate. I was a writer, communicator, and then went into the corporate world in Calgary, did some corporate communications and worked in nonprofit as well, and realized pretty quickly after 4 or 5 years, like, no, I'm not going to sit in a cubicle and do this ever. So I took a hard left, went to art school in Calgary as well, and took metalsmithing, and then decided I was going to become a goldsmith. So then I spent 7, 8 years being a full-time goldsmith. I was also a florist on the side. So I had very Instagrammable professions. I was taking pictures of everything I was doing anyways, because they were pretty. And this was earlier, pre-TickTock, obviously, but very much in the heyday of Instagram. And the best way to grow a retail business, especially an aesthetically pleasing one, was Instagram. So I just started experimenting and applying my copywriting skills, I guess, that I had from my undergrad, and really began to grow those businesses, specifically the jewelry business online, and was able to cultivate community as well around me, which was where I think my business thrived and differed from a lot of the other people that were doing jewelry stuff online at the time. I was taking lots of pictures of gold and diamonds, and I was growing that way, but I was also using Instagram as sort of like a Tumblr. If anybody remembers Tumblr, a bit of like a more personal blog to talk about issues that were real to me. So it started, I was talking about issues that were facing young creative professional women in the space. And then I moved from Calgary to Victoria. So I used that platform to sort of vlog that experience, what it was like to uproot my life for the first time, move out here. It was the first time that I also didn't also have a job. I was working at a flower shop in Calgary, and I decided to come out here and kind of throw all my eggs in one basket and open my first store. And I was able to also vlog that entire experience. And through that time, my business was really growing because I was generating a community around me and who I was and my vulnerabilities and my authenticity. I still am quite no holds barred on social media, and it's just who I am as a person. But at the time, it was really working for me to grow this community. And so my business was thriving. And so I opened one shop, and then I moved into another, and I was loving my job. I moved up pretty quickly into doing custom engagement ring design for a lot. It was a lot. It was busy. And then I had kids, had my first son, and that I kept that platform. I kept sharing jewelry and diamonds, but then it became a little bit more about motherhood and what it was like to experience that as a creative entrepreneur, and grew even more. And my business was coming almost entirely from people that I was connecting with online, other mothers, other creatives, other women who then were moving into the marriage phase of their lives and said, well, I know this girl, so obviously I need her to make my ring. And they weren't people that I knew in real life. They were Instagram besties, as I still call them. And then COVID came, and it just it changed, changed everything for everybody.
Yep.
And I hit this wall of creative stagnation. It was no longer fun to be doing what I was doing. I was making the same piece over and over. It was hugely flattering that these women mostly, and men, were coming to me because of this community that I had built online, but they wanted the same thing over and over. And it was just no longer really feeding my creative soul. And also I just wanted a regular paycheck a little bit too, more than like the project to project type thing. And I have a friend, a very close friend, one of my best friends, who's the president of a brokerage out here on the coast. And he semi jokingly over brunch one day said to me, well, you should come work for me. And I was like, no, no, I am I am an artist. I will not work in the mortgage industry. Thank you. You're dumb. But he kind of begged and said, you'd be really good at it. You should be a mortgage broker. Come answer my phones. And I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'll answer your phones. Why not? And it right away, right, like within the first couple of days when I was on call. So I was answering his lead calls and doing his online lead reach outs and stuff, and sort of doing now what you do or what your company does. And within the first like 4 or 5 phone calls, I was like, God damn, like this is actually really cool. And it was more about the thing that I love, the thing at the core of my like ethos as a person and as his brand is community and connection over everything else. And I realized very quickly that it wasn't just calling someone to try to sell them a mortgage. It
Yeah.
was calling someone to learn their life story. And maybe because I am like a chatty person, I was like bonding with these people straight out of the gate. It wasn't, hey, I need a mortgage to buy a house. It was, hey, I'm 22 years old and I have saved all of this money since I was 16 because nobody in my family has ever owned a home before. And it's really important to me that I do it. Or I'm 55, my husband passed, or I've gone through a separation, or whatever. I'm a single woman. I want to empower myself. And realizing that as mortgage professionals, these guys that I was working with weren't just finance bros. They were like pivotal parts of people's life stories and the biggest moments of their lives, and could absolutely and do absolutely steer the trajectory of some of those moments. And so I was like, I call myself like a mortgage fan, which is so dorky. But I became a fan like right away. And so I said to my friend, who was the guy that I was working for at the time, I said, well, obviously we're going to get this on Instagram. Like people need to know mortgages aren't boring. Mortgages aren't just finance crap. You know, there's a lot more to it. And so I started building their Instagram and getting on video. And at that time it was like my face talking about mortgages and playing with reels. And this is like sort of pre TikTok for business. And pretty much right away, I had people reaching out to me saying, oh, I saw what you were doing for this brokerage. Like, what can you help me? And so it was just under a year. I was sort of juggling both. I was working for that brokerage and I was juggling some clients. And then I had to say, like, you know what, I'm going to leave, but you can still be my client though. And then now we're here. So that's sort of the long short story of how I became whatever the hell I am now. I don't know how to describe what I do.
That would be an entrepreneur, I think, is the technical term for that. So
Entrepreneur. It doesn't feel real sometimes that this is the thing that I get to do and get paid for, you know?
Well, then life is good.
Life is good. It's busy, but it's good.
Yeah, busy but good. So you have come up with social media and built a community around yourself. And one clarification, I think, when people hear community online, there's a lot of people that are looking to put that in a box. Like, is it a Facebook group? Is it this? Is it that? So when you say community, how do you frame that? And how do you think of a community online?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's funny. I heard you say somewhere, it might have been last week, that you need to create a town and make yourself the mayor of it. And I use the same analogy often. I see it as a multifaceted collection of people who come to you as their beacon for advice in your field, whatever field that may be, whether it's goldsmithing or mortgaging or whatever. But the person that they trust inherently, even before they're looking for whatever you're selling. So for me, it's a combination of all of the social media platforms. I mean, right now I'm currently like a TikTok stan, so I would love it if it was TikTok first. But whatever anybody is comfortable with. And it's a combination of using those methodologies and those platforms to grow to an audience that doesn't yet know you, as well as what you do, which is leveraging past clients, past leads, and making sure that you're still centered as the expert and the mayor of your own online town when it comes to those people as well. So that you're sort of you're the first person that people think of when they think of mortgages and creating trust around that, however that looks for you.
Yep. That's a fantastic answer. And I think there's a lot of us, myself included. So when I came up in the internet marketing world, it was all about the list. Like you've got to have the email list. So everything that you were doing, drive opt-ins to an email list. And that email list is where you created that bond, where you created that community through that one-way communication channel. And seeing the evolution of Facebook and Instagram and all of these platforms coming out, I know there's a lot of people in the industry that still think about that. Like they think about, it's almost like black and white, where it's like, I generate a lead, I send them an email, I get the business, or I don't. And what's happened is there's been this shift that you've come up and done a phenomenal job with, of it's an introduction to a person. And it's almost like you said, the digital mayor analogy. It's like, hey, come on into our town, check it out, and let's keep in touch. And that's what social is. And ultimately, that's how social media algorithms are designed. They're designed for somebody to experience you once, and then they will drip feed your content into their feed to see if that's a relationship that they want to keep up on. And if view rates, engagement rates, if you can get people to engage with your content, they're becoming part of your community. But it's not just a one and done, it's a conversation that goes on over time.
Exactly. Yeah. Nurturing. It's nurturing the community. I often refer to TickTock as the Tinder, if you will, because it is the algorithm that pushes you out the furthest and the widest. You're going to grow the fastest and get the furthest reach. Whereas Instagram is sort of your Match.com. It's a little bit more in depth. It's where you nurture those existing relationships. It's got a little bit more maturity to it. And that's where the people come to sort of, they're your OGs. They're the people that really want to hear more of what you have to say. And they're ultimately the more likely to convert. I read something recently that Instagram followers are worth financially 10 times more than TikTok followers, but you're likely to have 10 times more TikTok followers. So you're going to grow over there. You're going to sell yourself. You're going to use it as your dating profile, but then you're going to ideally convert those people to Instagram followers, because that's where they're going to convert to business. And that's where you're going to massage those people. And then your list is still, I believe, very, very, very important. And I also, for me personally, I do some email marketing for clients, and I encourage people to really be using that list on a personal basis. But I do lots of linking back to video content, because basically, like, who needs a website anymore? You can put your face all over these two things, and that's going to give people all they need to know. Website is just a nice cherry on top.
That it is. Okay, so we have to dive into TikTok. So
we love TikTok,
right? So, okay, so I would like to preface this with a little bit of a story from my side of things. So I was on a webinar presentation last week, and there was a gentleman in the comments, been in the mortgage business 2.5 years, sources 100% of his customers direct from TikTok.
Oh, I bet I know who it is.
I'm going to try and get him on the show. And so hopefully just to hear the story. But then, so like 3 days later, it was on Monday, I was on TikTok because we're producing a ton of content on TikTok. And like second up on my feed is a mortgage broker from Vancouver who's live, and pretty early in the day, but he was drinking white wine and he was just hanging out, answering people's questions. And like hundreds and hundreds of live viewers on a mortgage broker just asking questions about what's happening in the marketplace right now. So for those of you that think that TikTok is just weird dances and stuff, okay, first off, my first 2 weeks on TikTok were harsh, man. I did not like TikTok at all.
And everybody says that.
Like the algorithm was serving me stuff that was designed for a 40-ish male dude, and that's just not my vibe. Like, I'm a dad, I love my wife, I've got great kids. I'm not trying to be one of the Lambros, you know what I mean? And so that content was not for me. But then I started liking Tony Robbins and liking all of that stuff that really truly interests me. And now the 10 to 15 minutes of TikTok that I'll get, it's like every single piece of content is highly relevant, really enjoyable for me. So TikTok has changed, and the algorithm is the most advanced thing that I have ever experienced, because literally from session to session, it will change based on what you're interested in.
100%.
So somebody who gets interested in getting a mortgage, you're going to be able to serve mortgage content to them because they're in your local marketplace and you're an influencer on TikTok. And influencer is just somebody who's producing content in the mortgage space. You can be in that person's feed the next day because the algorithm is that smart. So I just want to preface the conversation with the opportunity of what exists out there if you're willing to lean into it. Now, I've exhausted my TikTok knowledge, and Lacey, you get to pick it up from here and kind of fill in the rest on how you help your clients and how you're doing such a great job on TikTok.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's funny. I was very against TikTok at the beginning as well. Like when everybody was getting on TikTok at the beginning of the pandemic, it was very much, sourdough bread recipes and dance trends that we could do in our houses, in our jammies when we were working from home. And I was like, this is stupid. There is no value here. And that was, I guess almost 3 years ago now. And I was very much like you. I turned it on for the first time and was like, like this is dumb. I actually deleted it twice before I decided to make a real run at it. And then I downloaded it again and said, okay, no, I am making an honest to goodness effort. I am going to post a bunch of times a day and see what happens. And this was outside of my personal, or it was personal stuff, mom stuff. And like you say, the next day I was seeing stuff that I didn't even know I wanted to know about it. Like, how does this algorithm know me better than my mother? How is it seeing into future Lacey and what she wants? So I started practicing with the mortgage stuff. I said, I wonder if I could get the algorithm to understand that I only want to speak to mortgage agents and real estate professionals, ideally Canadian ones. And here we are. I've been on for 4 months only as myself, as creating my own content. And I have just cussed 1,000 followers, and almost every single person in there is someone who is absolutely directly in my niche. And even before I started creating my own content, because what I do in my day to day is I help mortgage professionals create their own content. So up until recently, I've been doing it on a one-to-one kind of full service. So I've been helping people from square one, scripting videos for them, understanding what their personal brand ethos is, what their personal brand that they want to put forward is, and helping them script, edit, post the whole thing. So basically being, for lack of a better term, a creative director. So I never really bothered doing it for myself because I understand the technical and the back end of making videos look pretty and be catchy. And I had clients who had like 40 followers and were getting leads. And it was because they were posting very high value, very on brand, and very authentic to them stuff. And I have some guys who are silly, dancy, trendy, goofy dum-dums on there, but they're doing it with really good, high value financial information. Then I have some other guys, one woman in specific, who all she does, she's like very serious, talks to the camera, tells a story. Every time she posts one, she gets somebody interested because they're doing really high value stuff. And so I had to say, okay, well, I need to see if I could do this for myself as well. And turns out all of the things I was preaching, as soon as I put them into practice, it really works. And so seeing how fast it can grow and how it's like, it spreads like wildfire. Like once you post one video that's high value, you're reaching thousands and thousands of potential sets of eyes that, like I say, they might not even know that they're interested in mortgages. They might be someone who, liked a video of someone who talks about crypto or someone who talks about real estate, or they might have liked one video of a beautiful townhome in Vancouver. And next thing you know, you're getting content of a mortgage broker who might be able to get you that beautiful condo in Vancouver. And it happens so fast. And I think the huge thing that I personally love about TikTok is it can be whatever you want it to be. And there's not really any rules. Like there's things that we can do to make it do better. There's, the algorithm is favoring certain things that week, different hooks, different types of business, different types of SEO. But in all, you can do it however you want to do it. And you can meet with equal success regardless of how that is. And people love that. People love the unpolished nature. People love witnessing people experiment with who they are and how they face. So I think, especially in the mortgage community, because it has traditionally been a suit and tie, professional, white collar kind of profession, people have this misconception that they need to get on TikTok and do that. But that's absolutely not the case. People don't want to see that. There's 30,000 mortgage agents registered in Canada right now, and every single one of them has something different to offer.
Yep.
But every single one of them could sit in front of the camera and say, well, this is the definition of equity. But like, nobody cares. What people care about is who you are and how you can take care of them and how you're going to grow trust. And so actually, when you mentioned Tony Robbins, that's a great example, because like I see a lot of people in all kinds of professions, not just mortgages, who talk more about personal growth, for example, about making your best self. And people who follow that kind of content are probably the kind of people who are considering investing in real estate. So it doesn't need to be as cut and dry and obvious. And you can just talk about things that make you happy and bring you joy. And however that looks, whether you want to do a stupid dance or not, and people are going to come to you. And much like when it was for jewelry, when I was doing similar stuff on Instagram. I was sharing my soul. When people were coming to me, it wasn't because, they searched jewelry designer on Instagram. It was because they knew me. They knew my soul. They knew my heart. They knew who I was as a person and what my business was. And so they came to me. So that's where TikTok can help you really show people, this is who I am. This is why we should be friends. You can create a parasocial relationship to a certain extent so that when the time comes, when this pent up demand drops that we were told to expect, people will go, I know exactly who I'm going to call.
Yep.
Because this person has been vulnerable with me. So yeah, I can't say enough good things about TikTok, which is funny because it's a dumb app for doing silly dances once upon a time.
So when you sit down with a client and you're going through content creation, because that's, I would say, one of the things that so many people struggle with. How do I get on video? And then how do I actually make a video that's going to have an impact? And I think we have to start through, there's a journey with video. Certainly I've gone through it. Perhaps you've gone through it yourself. But you start, your first videos are horrible. Everybody's first videos are horrible, but you just have to get through that until you can get to the point where you're actually able to communicate to people through video. So when you're working with a client and you're working, let's say they've gone through that process of the first 10 bad videos are done. Fine. You know how to shoot a video. What do you put in the video? What type of content? How do you walk your clients through that process of that creation?
So it depends on the client. So I sort of offer a few different tiers. There's people that, I do everything for. So I simply say, here's what you need to record this week. Sit down in front of a microphone with a ring light on, say these things into the camera, send it back to me, and I'll edit and make it look pretty. And I give them tips like use a negative hook. For example, this is a trope that's doing really, really well on TikTok right now. And it's basically posing your hook, the beginning of the video, that first 2 seconds that gets people to watch, as something that they are doing wrong. And it doesn't need to mean, you're stupid at the first 2 seconds of your video. But for example, like, here's one mistake that I see every first time home buyer make, for example. So giving them little tips of things to record, little like hints of what the algorithm likes. For example, introducing yourself every 2 or 3 videos, because ideally you're facing an audience that doesn't know who you are. So you need to remind them or tell them why you matter. And then explaining how to punch the high value in the middle. So you basically want to, if you're doing a long form video, hook them, introduce yourself, punch some real high value in 10 to 15 seconds, and then wrap it up with a call to action. But for these more in-depth clients, I'm writing all of that because at my core, I'm a copywriter. I love it. I love scripting. I love creative directing. So I just say, go forth and record. They send it back to me. I edit it and I put it out. And that is fun and it's fine. But in my dream world, I would rather empower people to be able to do it themselves, because it's social media for a reason, and because I'm good at what I do. You can't tell as much when it's someone who's a real professional doing it, but you can also tell, you can tell when it's someone who isn't the person you're seeing creating. So in my dream world, I love to educate and empower and give people the tools to create it themselves. And say one piece of feedback that I get about TikTok in general from agents is that it can be, it's such a time sink scrolling to figure out what is trendy. Yep. Because one of the best ways to grow is to use the pieces of trending audio. It doesn't mean doing a dance. It can mean like lip syncing or just using an audio and doing something else, but understanding where those are coming from, how to best leverage them. So I do that. So it's pitch time. I've actually been working on creating something called The Club. So my business has been called the Mortgage Broker Social Club since the beginning, since I've been doing one-to-one for everybody. But I'm only one person. I do have a team, but I am a obsessive control freak when it comes to content creation. So I've kind of shifted to a club model, a membership model, where we educate people about all of this stuff. So everything from creating your personal brand, understanding who you are at your core and your ethos and who you want to be portrayed as, authentically though, not like making it up.
Yeah.
Like find the things that make you the best and share them, all the way through to the minutia of how to edit on CapCut. So trying to really give people the tools to start making things when they're inspired to. And then also including a weekly email that says, here's 10 trends on TikTok, 10 trends on Instagram, and 10 long form prompts that you can try, and a bunch of different ways to do them so that the guesswork is taken out of it, because that is arguably the biggest time sink when it comes to content creation. And I think for a lot of people, it's maybe second only to like the getting over yourself, seeing yourself on camera and taking yourself too seriously. And then in there as well, there is a library of static content that changes month to month. So that's like captions and your Canva templates for Instagram and Facebook, but those are almost taking a backseat. I think they're still really important because like we said, when someone Googles you, or when they are fed a lead, or when you're fed a lead from someone, the first thing they're going to do is Google you, and they're going to see your website and your social media. And so having really high value, really recognizable on brand content on those places is still important, but it's also not how you grow organically, how you grow that community to be the mayor of. So that is what I have been working on the past couple of months, growing this thing that people can just sign up and they get educated. It's basically group therapy for people who want to be on TikTok and Instagram and all of that stuff. So a group coaching sort of model, so that I don't need to be doing it all for them. Because as much as like I love doing it, I love creating, but I think it's way more fun to teach and empower and give the tools, because once you get good at it, like there's guys who I've known since the beginning of to their TikTok days who now have like the same thing. If you look at their first few videos, they're like dumpster fires, right? But they pushed through and they persevered and they left that stuff up because it's funny. And now they've like blossomed. Like I'm sure we're talking about the same person who gets 100% of his business from TikTok. That doesn't happen overnight, but once you hit your flow, once you're authentic, and once people can really see who you are, it doesn't matter if you have 40 followers or 40,000 followers. The people who follow you are following you because what you have to say is of value and it's real.
Yep.
And it's personal to you. Because like every mortgage broker can say the same stuff, but it's like, what angle are you going to use, and what is the client avatar that you're speaking to, and then just doing it to death. And it doesn't need to be rocket science, but I think when it's a new medium like this, I do it. We overthink it, right? We're like, oh, if I do this, somebody's going to think I look stupid. And if I do this, somebody's going to judge me. And my friends from high school are going to make fun of me. Like, who cares?
Mm-hmm.
Let them. They're just jealous, baby.
So all amazing. The content that you're producing on TikTok, are you leaving it native on TikTok, or are you repurposing it then to Instagram, Facebook, YouTube? What does that look like?
I like to work smarter, not harder. Yep. So for the most part, I create for my own personal content. I create on TikTok and then share it to I mostly just stick to Instagram and occasionally Facebook, because that's a lot where my audience comes from. But I have some clients who we create in TikTok and then share it across the board. A lot of people are doing still a lot of B2B sort of stuff on LinkedIn. And there is, as much as the content is really client facing, it's nice to share the occasional thing on LinkedIn to show potential business clients or business partners, referral partners, that this is who you are. This is the service you provide. I know that people will connect with realtors on there specifically who see like, oh, this guy's fun. This guy's a fun, silly dude. I know the perfect client for him. So LinkedIn can be valuable as well. But yeah, definitely creating either right in TikTok and stealing it out, or creating in a third-party app like CapCut, and then applying it to the different things. And then there is some science behind, as you probably know, using native text. So I will create a video in CapCut and then post it to TikTok using the native captions, and post it to Instagram using the native captions and native trending sounds in each. to sort of take advantage of the power of those algorithms, but it's definitely not like a super necessity. You can absolutely create one thing in TikTok, copy paste, copy paste, copy paste, copy paste. I don't have many people on YouTube right now because long form stuff is, as you know, it's a whole other kettle of fish.
Yep.
Asking people to sit down and record a full on video is like asking for 90 seconds is a stretch. So there's
Yep.
certain people that I will ask that of, but right now it's prioritizing short form and really fast growth stuff.
Cool.
But definitely repurpose.
That is awesome. So, Lacey, thank you for being so generous with your time. I've got one other, a discussion, let's say, amongst two marketers who love social media and getting out there and copywriting. So I had a guest on the show. His name was Dennis Yu. You guy's a genius, just brilliant. And him and I got into TikTok, and he mentioned to me that the TikTok algorithm is the first algorithm in the world to do location-based optimization. So based on whatever the background is in your video, it will actually optimize and show your video to other people that are in that location. So location-based content. So like you're at a football game, they can tell what stadium you're in. And if you're broadcasting live or talking about that particular thing, people that are watching that game or interacting with that football or whatever, that football team on TikTok, they will see your content because those two things are related.
Yeah.
So I've got this strategy and I would love for somebody to try this, but I think that mortgage professionals should be going to the banks where they get declined, and they should shoot videos in front of the banks and say, have you been declined by a bank? Because I can help you get approved if you've got this, and this. And that way, anybody that's coming out of that bank that's applied for a mortgage that's been declined has the likelihood to see that video in their feed.
That's savage. Savage. I love it.
So techie knowledge, right? How would you take that as creatives? How would you view that? And how would you work with your clients to do the hook, the intro, the value, and the call to action on a video like that?
More or less like you just said it. Like, I think that I love it. I love that it's a bit sneaky and a bit savage. If I was going to do something like that, I would always try to add a touch of humor to it. I love humor. It doesn't need to be being silly. It doesn't need to be doing a dance. But I think that the negative hook there is it writes itself. You know, like, were you just declined? Or give a statistic, you know, this number of people get declined, or these institutions, or not even mentioning the bank, saying, you know, did you know that X number of people get declined for their mortgages because of this at the top 6 or at the big 6 banks, for example. And you're just casually walking down the street and you happen to be walking by X bank. And then say, well, did you know that as mortgage professionals, we have, or in my practice, I have access to blah, blah, blah lenders. Or if this is where I would niche it down a little bit, I have a couple of clients who work specifically, they're really, really well-versed in the alternative space. Say the alternative space is totally misunderstood. Here's why. And then list a bunch of ways that the alternative space is superior to the big 6 banks, and talk to the people who are going to need to or should be leveraging the alternative service, even without mentioning the big bank at all. Just having the big bank there saying, alternative space is good, here's why, or telling what I love more than anything on all, whether it's email list, whether it's TikTok, no matter what, storytelling. So telling a story. You know, I knew someone, they got rejected from a big 6 bank because they were self-employed and they didn't have XYZ. So we took them to the alternative side, and this is what happened. Or we had someone who was not able to make their mortgage payment. They were freaking out. They thought they were going to have to file bankruptcy. Their bank didn't want to help them. Casually, that bank's over their shoulder. So we took them to the B side. We took them alternative. The rate was a bit higher, and we consolidated everything. A year later, they're back at the bank, or they're back on the A side. So not necessarily, you can't, if you're the kind of person, and this is where it's very personal to your branding, but like if you're the kind of person who, I call it rants or controversies, to get engagement, if you're the kind of person that will by name call out, you know, political practices or certain institutions, go for broke. But if that's not authentic to you, then don't do that. If you're the kind of person who tells stories, who's more from the heart, who's more family focused in your content, then tell a story. And you can do the same. It's the same piece of marketing. It's the same target, just with your own lens and talking to your demographic. You know what I mean? So it's the difference between attracting the kind of person who wants to work with a shark, which some people do.
Yep.
And you want to speak to those people, and those people are going to be attracted to the person who has shark-like marketing tactics. But if you're the kind of person who's a bit softer around the edges, then you want to invite those people as well. And you'll definitely leverage that location-based algorithm, which is, a lot of people think it's creepy and a lot of people think it's scary. I love it. I love it. I love when the algorithm sells me something because of somewhere I was or a text conversation I was having. I'm like, great, sold. I'll buy it. I'll buy it. I don't care. Everybody's watching us anyway, so we may as well lean in.
That is, so from an optimization standpoint, we've got location. The other big thing is hashtags. So can you share with our viewers best practices for hashtags, where to find them, how to use them?
Really easy. So what I like to do is I do this once a week for every client. I go on and I search for other creators who are trending in that space. So say, for example, I have a lot of clients who are in Toronto, and they work with investor clients, for example. So I go around and I look what's trending in the Toronto real estate space. And then I just go on and I see what hashtags those people are using. I click on that hashtag and I see which ones have sort of the 20,000 to 100,000 videos within them. And I optimize with those ones. And hashtags are also, because the SEO side of the TikTok algorithm is shifting a little bit, hashtags have sort of dropped down in the list of priority under keywords, because recently TikTok did introduce the search function. So when you're using certain keywords in your caption or in your native text, so in the caption, so the actual text that you write below the video, or on the screen, TikTok will recognize them as keywords and put them into its search engine, which I'm sure TikTok was the most used search engine for people under 40 in that last year, because now people will go in and type a question. So they've optimized that. So yes to hashtags, but using hashtags more sparingly than being really, really intentional with the keywords that you're using. So if I was to use that Toronto real estate investment guy as an example, I want to make sure that I'm using words in my caption like Toronto, wealth management, wealth growth, financial literacy, real estate investing, BRRRR method, for example, in the actual body text, because that's where, when someone searches, BRRRR investments, financial growth, Toronto, they're going to find your content. So even more so, like, I think the SEO is the new hashtag for TikTok, and definitely use hashtags, but like 4 to 6 maximum.
Cool. All right.
Yeah. Same with Instagram, but less or so, but same with Instagram. Because Instagram just is trying really hard to be TikTok, but they'll never succeed.
Yeah, YouTube too. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. YouTube, I think, is closer though. I think YouTube is coming in clutch with some of what it's working on. It's going to be an interesting year for sure in the landscape.
And for those of you, if that's like drinking from a fire hose, just pick one, lean in, shoot your first video. That's where everybody starts. But I can tell you, communication with your past customer base, communication with your referral partners, and communications with new customers are happening through video, short form content on these platforms. Yeah. And if you want to see an influx in that business, these are the places to start. And Lacey, you've done a phenomenal job of kickstarting us out here. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, sir. It's fun.
Where do people go to get more information about you, the Mortgage Broker Social Club, please?
I am at The Broker Social on TikTok and Instagram, and www.thebrokersocial.com on the World Wide Web.
Awesome.
And come join me on TikTok. Come to the dark side. It's fun. It'll be fun. I dance. I do dance. I don't love it, but I do it. Because you lead by example, right?
Well, all of those links will be in the bio. I will disappoint you on my TikTok. There will be no dancing on the Chris Johnstone TikTok, but lots of great content on both those. So again, Lacey, thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris.